former Disney cast members of Reddit, what are some of your craziest, creepiest, best stories? Not so much behind the scenes stuff, but one of my favorite stories. I worked at Epcot for 8 years, and this happened sometime in the early 90s. There was a couple from somewhere in the Midwest that had driven to Miami to adopt a disabled child, their ninth. On the way home they decided to stop at Disney World for the kids. After pulling into the Epcot parking lot, their handy van caught fire. They got all the kids out, but the van was a total loss. Disney put them all up in one of their hotels while the couple tried to figure out what to do next. Turns out, there was a convention of Rotary International at the Swan Hotel. One of the members saw the story on the news and at breakfast the next morning, passed the hat among the members. They ended up collecting enough to buy the couple a brand new van, extra equipment for all the kids, and a hefty check left over. I have always held a certain amount of pride in the Rotary Club for this amazing generosity. That's so amazing kind, both of the Rotary Club and also for Disney for putting them up as well. I do hope they sued the manufacturer of the original van though, pretty sure they're not supposed to spontaneously combust like that. Part creepy but mostly crazy story here. We had a rich guest come into Club 33, super secret yet not so secret restaurant in New Orleans Square, for the first time I believe, and he wanted a private room and some Disney princesses to have fun with and wondered if any of the hostesses or waitresses were interested when we told him we could not accommodate him. Not that I condone it, but as far as high ticket whoring goes, I'd bet you could make some ridiculous amounts as a Disney princess who fricks for money. There weren't many of the creepy internet rumor type stories for me. I feel like a lot of those come from people who like the idea of a corrupted Disneyland. I will say though, some of the areas were really unsettling when they were empty and dark. Toontown was one, especially since it always closes early. The twisted proportions are cartoony during the day, but when you're alone at night, it just feels really wrong. Like you might see a mascot running at you out of the dark. And I couldn't imagine if the music started all of a sudden. Most of that happy, cheerful crap is downright terrifying alone and at night. LOL. I used to work at the box office. I once had a woman come up and ask for a ticket into Disneyland. She then placed a box on the counter while looking for her wallet. IDK how she managed to get that box past security. I see a picture on it and then I see dates. I realize that they are the ashes of assuming her little girl. I had to keep her at my window while I waited for security. It broke my heart, but a lot of people like to dump ashes on rides and it literally just gets vacuumed up at the end of the night. I almost feel like it would be nice if Disney made a designated place in their parks where parents could spread the ashes of their children to honor them, since so many kids love the parks. Someplace they wouldn't be swept, vacuumed up, and could actually be either spread or buried in peace. This was a while ago now, but it still makes me smiley and nostalgic. Character performers, such as myself, are only out during specific time slots during the day for pictures. When those times end, usually guests aren't allowed to enter the queue anymore, and we finish up taking photos with those remaining. Unfortunately, this day was particularly hot and fur characters had been experiencing issues, that is, fainting, due to the heat, so they were packing us up rather quickly at the end of shifts. Dale and I, Chip, were waving our goodbyes to the guests when we heard this child absolutely wailing her lungs out over not being able to meet us. She wasn't being bratty, she sounded genuinely upset. My attendant is the best. The crowd dispersed a bit and she was able to catch up with the parents. She found out they would be returning tomorrow, and since we all had shifts the following day, we pulled some strings to set up a small meeting. Here's how it went down. The parents, as instructed to, brought her to Critter Country a while before the first meet and greet of the day. I crept up behind her and gently put my paws over her eyes, and pulled them back to reveal Dale striking this wonderfully heroic pose in front of her. I still remember how she screamed in excitement when she realized her favorite Disney characters had come out just to spend some time here. We gave her autographs and did photos, then spent the rest of the time playing tag. I worked at one of the restaurants in MK. I had a family abandon their adult son, who was in a wheelchair with a slew of health complications, in the middle of our walkway while they went on rides. He was there for about 2-3 hours. Man, this one just makes me mad. Half because I know Disney makes accommodations for disabled people to go on rides, and half because he's stuck with a family of buttholes who abandoned him to go dong around on rides. I'm surprised no one has mentioned Towel Baby. Most people who worked at WDWMK in the early 2000s heard of or met Towel Baby. It's a rather sad story, so I'll try to tell it respectfully. Several times a week a couple with annual passes came to the Magic Kingdom with what appeared to be a swaddled infant. However, if you looked closely, the woman was carrying a rolled up towel wrapped in a hospital newborn blanket. The man was always very gentle, leading his wife through security and into the park. I'm not certain if they went on rides, but I know for sure that they always asked for a table for 3 at restaurants. They came through my turnstile a few times, and while the woman rarely made eye contact, they were always soft-spoken and respectful. The story legend was that the couple had lost an infant years prior and the woman fell into a deep depression and became delusional. The only thing that kept her somewhat functional was fussing over this towel and coming to the Magic Kingdom. Observing them navigate the park was a masterclass in compassion. Not only watching the husband care for his wife, but seeing every single cast member treat them both with respect and kindness. I remember managers telling us not to make fun of them, obviously, but also not to fuss over them. They are just another family enjoying the park. That is so sad. Former Walt Disney World merchandise cast member here was on the Disney College program last fall. I worked primarily in the Star Tours gift shop Tatooine Traders. This is one of my best stories. We had several autographed pictures behind the counter. Luke, Han, Leia and Chewie was $10,000. I was on the register near the pictures when this older gentleman asked me how much the centerpiece was. I told him $10,000, sir. He looked at me and said that would look great in my theater room. How many do you have in stock? I said 2, including the one on display. He said perfect, I'll take both. The total after taxes was a bit over $20,000. I was a bit flustered swiping that credit card. I know there are some rich people out there but never really got to see it firsthand. My favorite part is that as I offered to ship it home for him, he says no thanks. I brought my plane with me. I worked at Hollywood Studios for more than a year while I went to UCF. The dumbest story I have is about a woman who exited the ride where I worked and discovered wet stuff coming from the sky. I was standing near stroller parking helping people organize strollers. The woman came up to me and told me that she didn't like the wet stuff coming from the sky and that I should tell my boss to turn it off. At first, I laughed because I thought she was kidding, which only pissed her off more. Don't they know that this stuff ruins people's vacations, she said. We have no way of controlling the rain, ma'am. This is Florida and we get quick storms like this in the summer, but it might go away after a while. I said, what about the bubble, she said. I was thoroughly confused by what she meant by bubble, so I had to ask that she was saying bubble. Apparently she thought that all of Disney was under a big bubble and we controlled the weather, like Reese on Star Trek. I confirmed that there was no bubble, that this was the real deal. She walked away insisting that something should be done about it, but that's just one of the many stupid things that happened during my time as a CM. It was just one of the dumbest conversations I had. How did this woman make it to adulthood? I worked at a restaurant in downtown Disney in California as a host. James Spader came in once, tried to get a table with his dog, who was obviously not a service dog, and even if it was an emotional support dog, they don't have to be legally allowed inside a restaurant. I told him I would be happy to seat him if he left his dog at the kennel, right across the esplanade. But I could not seat his dog inside. What if a health inspector came in? He yelled at me so much, his face turned red. He told my manager to fire me. Luckily, the restaurant had a patio, and the manager sat Spader at a table on the patio closest to the exit so we wouldn't get in trouble. My manager actually stood up for me, told Spader I was right. Spader still tried to get me fired. This was 10 years ago. I still hate James Spader with a red hot passion. Such an entitled butt, and since he always plays buttholes, I know he's not even a good actor. However, Christian Slater was very polite when he came in. He's just a hallucination anyway. Creepiest, got deployed. They needed people, so they moved me there, to Animal Kingdom for a week. I was at the dinosaur ride as merchandise and was leaving at night when everything was stocked and clean. Forgot where I was for a second when I heard screeching noises. They still haven't turned off the dinosaur noises and it was pitch black outside. Craziest, worked at Club Cool at Epcot. Had a Brazilian father. Pull down his daughter pants and let her pee on our floor. Another Club Cool one. People would try Beverly, Italy soda, and instead of puking in the trash, they would puke on the soda machine and we would have to shut it down and clean it. Got asked about putting the dome up when it was raining. When working at the Mission Space gift shop, I had a 3-hour standoff with a guest who was stealing vinyl mailings from us. My last official day working at Animal Kingdom before getting transferred to the Grand Floridian Resort was the opening day of Pandora at Animal Kingdom. I worked 17 hours that day. The wait time to get into Pandora from the Discovery Island bridge was 5 hours and another 5 hours wait time to ride the Banshee ride. Lots and lots of drunk people when I worked at Epcot. I really don't understand how people genuinely think that Disney is under a dome. Like, you're literally outside driving to the park, parking in the parking lots, and walking riding the tram into the park. You would see a freaking dome if there was one. At Disney right now, Jungle Cruise ride malfunctioned and elephants started spraying everyone like it was a fire hose. That was pretty funny. Former photographer at Disney World and worked very closely with the characters. There were some creepy regulars. There were this couple who'd pretty much come in every day and would get super mushy with the cast members, like a first name basis kind of thing, and they would make sure to catch specific performers during their set. No one knows how they know this info. We think they just stalk them. Some CMs think it's harmless, but I think it's incredibly odd. They even expect some special treatment because they are regulars. I've only encountered them a couple of times, but they managed to find me on Facebook just based off my name tag info. I knew a woman who played a female character from an animated film. She, and presumably many other such actresses, have to fend off countless come-ons from adult males, often with their kids and even wives nearby, without breaking character. There are security guards watching such actresses, discreetly, but they are not far, and they will have a chat with the most persistent. Of course I don't work there, but my aunt and uncle do. Uncle told us that among the bitter employees, Mickey is referred to as the rat. My favorite tidbit is that, because nothing bad is supposed to happen in Disney, there's weird euphemisms for a lot of things. If there needs to be a puke cleanup at one of the rides, it's called in as a protein spill. Protein spill is correct radio talk for puke. Worked as a housekeeper or master of the custodial arts. Former employee, but not of the parks themselves. We were given a tour backstage at Disneyland and I have an image burned into my mind that has never escaped me. It was of a clothing rack, one on wheels, placed back behind the Tower of Terror. On it, placed on hooks, were about 10 Mickey Mouse heads that must have been either drying after a wash or moving to a new location. The blood orange sunset, combined with the tower and what appeared to be decapitated Mickey heads hanging from hooks, is a fond creepy memory. Blinks, all of the heads are gone now. Cue creepypasta music. I was a CM from 2007 to 2014. It was said that there is a ghost of a little girl at Soarin' on B-side. They say she died in the parking lot before DCA was built, but no one can say exactly how. Some have claimed to hear footsteps coming up the metal stairs that led below the screen during a flight, but the tower CM is the only one there since the room is closed off during a flight and an open door would stop it immediately. So imagine sitting there, basically tuning out the show you've heard so many times, and start hearing metallic footsteps. It's dark. You feel like you're being watched. Very uneasy feeling. I quickly read Disneyland's incident history, and a 7-year-old girl was run over and killed by a charter bus in the parking lot in the mid-80s. Could be her. DCA was built on the old parking lot if anyone doesn't know. I got 2 different people banned for life from Disney, both in the same store in a 1-month period. One was trying to return stolen merchandise for credit. The other was stealing pins. The dumbass stealing pins actually used their credit card to purchase something else, and my investigative skills came into work. Found all of the receipts from the time of the theft, looked them up on Facebook, and found the girl. More people in their party came in later to steal more, and the guy involved this time was wearing the exact shirt from his FB pic. I alerted our management, who alerted security. Guests ended up being charged to their rooms for the pins that were stolen, and asked to never return to WDW property. Other story is during my time at the front desk there was this woman who was wreaking havoc all over property. Her magic file, think Disney permanent record, was as mile long and traversed parks and resorts. Some of the stories were bonkers. This woman left her service dog in her room all day while they were at the park. She complained that she was allergic to onions after ordering French onion soup, and let her dog relieve itself in the lobby of Wilderness Lodge and say that it wasn't her mess to clean up. Yet, after so long, security finally came to her room and informed her that she was no longer allowed on property. She is banned for life. Seeing the characters sat on the lunch table in the tunnels of Magic Kingdom, with their heads off, knowing that the Tinkerbell that flies out of the castle in a steel cable is a short Korean man. The face characters, people whose face you can see, especially the princesses, are the most arrogant people I have ever met ever. This one time, guests pulled me over into the woman's bathroom because some crazy bee was hitting her fricking kid inside the stall and the kid was wailing, and they wanted me to intervene cause the woman was Hispanic. I don't speak Spanish. Security was called. It was fricked. No idea what happened to the kid. To be honest, I have much more good stories than bad stories. The place I worked in was actually super crappy with crappy managers, but Disney is a nice place to work. They actually did give a crap about their guests. It's not just a front, and I like that. Knowing that the Tinkerbell that flies out of the castle in a steel cable is a short Korean man. That is great. Don't want to doubt who I am, but I used to work as a host at a restaurant on Main St. at DL. I have so many stories. One woman came up and asked where the bathrooms were, so I told her. She then decided that the line was too long, so she tried to just pull down her pants and pee in the lobby. Security came very quickly. A lot of people try and spread their loved ones' ashes at DL. It's very popular in the rivers of America. I've never seen it, but apparently security stops someone once a week. Not a worker, but my husband and I had passes there and would go bi-weekly. We saw two grown men fight over the last seat of a tram. One was with his family and the other was alone. It was midnight, everyone was tired, and there were a lot of people. But trams come every 5 minutes, so no biggie. But the man who was alone was not going to wait 5 minutes and ripped the father out of his seat so he can go. Cue what, my dear, and I called the tram fight. The father tried to fight the man to get back with his family, but the other guy was not having it. A cast member and security guard had to push the man off the father. They helped the father back on with his family and told the man to walk back to the parking lot. The walk back to the parking lot means walking around the tram pickup, halfway through downtown Disney, outside of the park, and back to the parking lot. Takes about 10 minutes, we've done it millions of times. But it feels like an hour if it is midnight and you've been walking since 8 AM. But you can spot Disney collection of stray cats that keep the rodent population down. They are only seen at early or late hours. So the man had to walk back to the parking lot and it was great. I actually did see a rat once at Epcot about 5 years ago. It was in the bushes by the Finding Nemo gift shop exit. And no, it wasn't Mickey. I used to work in the stores and there was this one guy who came in and sat with a little girl who was left alone in the theater by her nanny and started asking her weird questions like who she's with and how old she is. It wasn't until my fellow cast member, also a guy, noticed and approached them that the guy stood up and left immediately. We also had another incident where a guest complained to one of my stage leads that there was a man going around and asking children how old they were. Turns out he didn't know the size of his own kid's feet and he was trying to find another kid who is the same age to figure it out. My stage lead pretty much yelled at the guy LOL. This isn't a creepy story, but a horrifying one. I was working the day of the Columbia accident. I tried to find my telling of this story in my post history, but I'm on mobile and it's taking me too long. In 1998 on Christmas Eve, a cleat ripped off of the ship as it was docking. The clear sling shouted through the crowd, nearly decapitating a guest in front of his kids. It was terrifying not knowing what was happening or who was affected. I can only imagine how the CMs felt when the America Sings accident happened. I know I'm not being very helpful with links because of mobile, but the info is public, so I hope someone can link the references I'm making. At the Haunted Mansion ride in Disney World's Magic Kingdom, people would try to throw their loved ones' ashes into the graveyard. I'm not kidding, we had to close down the freaking ride to clean and sanitize. Apparently happens all the time in Anaheim as well. It's so sad that their ashes literally end up in a shop vac. I worked at the Haunted Mansion at Magic Kingdom in 2012 as an international CP. Heard some good stories from other cast members which may or may not be true. In the room with all the door knockers, there's a door you can actually go through with a vent you can look into the ride. During grad nights, a cast member would watch through the vent to make sure there wasn't any funny business. Apparently one night some girl was going down on a guy and the older maid behind the door shouted out at her to stop that. The girl bit down hard. This story happened to me. There are a set of pressure mats and sensors on the ride, so if anyone steps out, the ride stops. One day I was at what's called load 2, which is basically the last person you see before you enter the ride on the buggy. This position we will check the buggies have closed and would start the ride and make announcements. One day the ride stops, and due to someone setting off a sensor, I check the monitor to see what it is. Cause safety beings with me, we have to go into the ride and make sure it's all clear. I go into the ride and find the area where the sensor got triggered. I asked around and this older man calls me over and says his daughter got out and went through this one of the emergency exit doors. I quickly go through and check outside and I see someone walking away. I shout out to him if he's seen anyone and he says no. I get on the phone to one of the supervisors who says if you can't see anyone, tell the old man to check in with us once he gets off. Anyway, the old man never spoke to anyone else. Not sure if he was just loopy or what. There's also a book in one of the areas which has a whole bunch of stuff in it from cast members. When I was there, it has a drag photo of someone among other things. Man, the one about the old man really gave me goosebumps. I had a woman who was so unbelievably angry at MNY Hotel. I honestly don't remember why. That she was literally screaming at my supervisor that it would just take one military bee like her to bring Disney World to its knees. This was almost 10 years ago, so I forget most of the story now. But I recall she had a giant trash bag of merch. And I think she was angry about a long distance bill charge too. It was genuinely so insane. Let me guess. Military wife that thinks she holds her husband's rank. As a Space Mountain cast member at WDW, we all would rotate positions every 45 minutes. I was at load, where people start the ride, and this guy was very nervous in line, arguing with his friends in another language, maybe Portuguese. He got on the rocket, even though he seemed nervous, and before I sent him off, I made sure he wanted to go. He nodded and continued into light speed, 27 mph BTW. After a few minutes, the ride was emergency stopped and a code that was familiar but I couldn't recognize was called over the intercom. I saw my supervisor sprinting downstairs to the doors to the ride. He has gotten off the ride. You see, at the beginning of the ride, you are going pretty slow as you climb the coaster. He had just decided to get off. The creepy part of the story is that we all searched the building for about an hour. Lights on, about 50 people searching, and no one found him. So this man got off the ride, went down about 200 steps, and somehow found the exit, never to be seen by us again. I worked at the stunt show in Hollywood Studios last year, and we always had to stay open past 2 AM some nights for private events. Most of these were for cheerleading groups who would rent out the park, and our theater became a dance party, which was annoying but really not too bad. The worst part was about every 30 minutes we'd have to walk through our theater's queue because teenagers would sneak into the trees and just go at it. One night a fellow cast member and I caught 6 different couples within the span of 2 hours, and had to report them to their captains, which was always the most uncomfortable situations. We have an entire underground catacomb system in Magic Kingdom in Florida. Sometimes you could hear footsteps behind you when it was empty. This is the stuff I came here for. There might not be a lot of responses to this. Disney is kind of a stickler when it comes to having its employees sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Even the general staff and costumed characters at the parks have to sign them. Disney's always been real big on that magician mentality where if you know the inner workings, the magic is dispelled. That just happens to go hand in hand with protecting the business image bottom line. Bonus anecdote. I got to go to Pasadena my freshman year in high school to march in the Rose Parade, and we also marched in the closing parade at Disneyland one of the nights we were there, so in the same week I took the backlot tour at Universal and got to go behind the scenes at Disneyland. It was an eye-opening and worldview shrinking experience and a lot of fun for a bunch of high school kids. I used to work in the stores in DCA. We had closed for the night and I had just fixed the lollipop tree. I walk across the room to straighten the embroidery counter when I hear this clunk behind. Turning around, I see one of the lollipops on the top had jumped and landed a foot to the left of the tree. No one was around and it happened within seconds of me being at the counter. A lot of crazy and funny things have happened to me while working there. However, that was the only crazy thing. I miss being there. The 2 tips I can give to you if you're visiting the parks. 1. Be kind to the cast members. 2. Be extra careful with the costumed characters. We do get hurt a lot by guests. Yes, and Tigger gets tons of headbutts to the crotch. That is one thing I do not miss about Tigger. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.